Hello, my name is Joseph Doucet, and I'm the Dean of the Alberta School of Business. And it's a real pleasure for me to be here to honor the 39th recipient of the Canadian Business Leader Award, Don Wheaton. Don, congratulations.
Thank you, Joe. I truly am honored to get this special recognition, and thank you to the University of Alberta for that.
Don, we know you for your dealership on Whyte Avenue. Your car business has been a neighbor of the University of Alberta for over 60 years. But today I understand that you are now in many businesses: cars, aircraft, real estate, insurance, and banking. So perhaps we could start off by me asking you, tell us how the family business got started.
Well, Joe, as you know, I'm second generation, so it was my mother and father that started the business. My father returned from serving overseas during the war to come back to Saskatoon to get engaged to my mother. And at the time, Dad's very first business was running the concession stand at the local swimming pool in Saskatoon. As a matter of fact, my mother will tell you of her old uncle coming up to her and saying to her, "Marion, I can't believe you're marrying a man that runs a hot dog stand." So it's a true story. So it was Mom and Dad that started the business. My father passed away about 10 years ago, but we still have my mother. And as a matter of fact, we're going to be celebrating her 100th birthday next month.
Wow.
And she is in incredible both mental and physical health. So shortly after Mom and Dad got married, Dad read about a general store that was for sale in Porcupine Plain, Saskatchewan, which is a small town of about 500 people, about 150 miles northeast of Saskatoon. And Dad went out to Porcupine to meet with the two old gentlemen that owned the general store, and made a deal with them that he would work with them for 6 months, and then one of the two old partners would become his financial partner. So Dad told the story that the 6 months are up, and it's time to determine who was going to be his financial partner. And he said that the two old gentlemen actually stood in front of him and flipped a coin between them to determine who would be the partner. And thankfully, he ended up with the right partner. But we often kidded Dad because the part of the story that he didn't tell was whether it was the winner or the loser of the coin toss that actually won. But Mom and Dad were busy in Porcupine growing their family. I was born in Porcupine, and Dad growing his business. I mean, he paid like $5,000 for his interest in the general store, so it was very small. But they'd been there for a few years, and the banker called Dad and said, if you would like to be the General Motors dealer in Porcupine, come down to the bank and sign your name. So Dad put together a partnership with 3 other local businessmen to buy the business, and Dad would be the operating partner, the other 3 would be financial. Anyways, as fate would have it, it was a long, cold winter, and business was not great. And they decided to have a shareholders meeting without Dad present. And they decided that Dad was going to bankrupt them and that they were going to have to take him out. So they, of course, presented this to Dad, and Dad said, "Gentlemen, if you're uncomfortable, why don't I take you out?" And that's exactly what he did, and he, of course, never looked back from there. So Mom and Dad spent 13 years in Porcupine Plain in this small little town, and moved to Edmonton in 1961. So I was a youngster, and General Motors supported him in taking on the General Motors franchise right here on Whyte Avenue. And that dealership remains our flagship store in our group today. And then, of course, myself and my siblings helped Dad, grow the dealer network, and then we got into insurance and into banking, and aviation was a hobby of his, and then it turned into a business and so on. So, but it was Mom and Dad that made the big sacrifice of going to small town Saskatchewan in the 40s to maybe a place many of us might not necessarily like to go to, but to get the capital together to be able to come to the city and grow the business. So that's a little bit of history on how we got to Edmonton and how the business got started with my folks.
Well, that's a great story, and you speak to family and entrepreneurship. You also mentioned your siblings. So tell us what it's like or what it was like to grow up in an entrepreneurial family with a large number of siblings, how that worked.
Well, to start with, we were all really good friends. So we like each other. So we've worked together and we've played together, and so that's been really, really rewarding. When we set up our business model, something we wanted to do is to be able to provide some independence for each of my siblings. So geographically, we were fairly well diversified. So as we grew out the dealer network, one of my siblings would go and operate it and so on. But the financial structure that we did was that the main parent company would own 50% of the shares, and then my individual siblings in the particular city that we're in could own 50%. And that was important because it gave them the autonomy of being able to run their own business. And we were diversified enough geographically that we weren't stepping on each other, which can easily happen in a family business if you're all located in exactly the same place. So that model really worked well for us. As a matter of fact, as we grew our dealer network, today we have just as well more non-family members that are dealer partners with us in these various cities, but they have the same deal that my siblings and myself got in terms of ownership. Now, we didn't have ownership in the parent company that owned the other 50%, so all of my siblings, of course, were participating in how the main company was going, but they were also running their own business and could eat what they killed. You know, it was so it was a good model. It worked well. So we all get along really well.
Well, that's great. Now let me get back to the breadth of your businesses, and tell me, who decides to start a bank? How do you do that?
Okay. Well, while we were building out our dealer network, we could see through the 80s that the dealership was changing, and what was becoming the most important department in a dealership was the business office. And the business office is where the final transaction of a car purchase takes place, where you do the banking contract. Car buyers are motivated insurance buyers. By law, they have to do something. We would sell them a warranty, those sorts of things. So the business really changed, and we could see that. So what we did is we did an actuarial study because of all the insurance that we were selling, and we could make sense of starting an insurance company that just with our own internal dealership network that we had. So we applied to get an insurance charter, which is a complicated thing, and took us about 3 years. But no sooner did we get up and running in our business that we had a number of our dealer friends, and not just our partners, but friends, express an interest in us doing their underwriting for them in their business office and help them. We had expertise that we developed because of our dealer group of how to run a real strong business office. And so the business then just grew from there. So today we have about 1,800 dealers that we work with them in their business office and offer our insurance products. So we had this distribution channel right across Canada, right from Vancouver to Halifax. And we were having this interface with all of these customers through this distribution channel. And the only piece of the transaction that we weren't doing was the banking piece. And so about 15 years ago, up until 15 years ago, no one person in Canada could own more than 20% of a bank in Canada. And we saw where they changed those rules, because they were trying to provide for some competition in Canada to allow niche players to be able to get a banking charter. And so we made application. Up until 15 years ago, there was only a handful of banks in Canada, whereas in the United States, there's like 10,000 banks or something. So we made application, and when we put our business plan together with the Office of the Superintendent of Insurance, they liked our business plan, because one of the first questions you might ask when you're especially applying for a bank license, like how are you going to compete against these big organizations in Canada? Where are you going to get your business from? We were already doing the business. We in the business office were selling finance contracts to customers, but we were doing it for all of the banks. So we got the first crack at the customer, the first opportunity to talk to them. So they really liked our business plan, and it took us about 3 years, but we got our banking license, and at the time we became the first privately held bank in the country. So there you go. So that's the story. That's how we got into the banking in the banking business.
So it's a great story of both innovation and seizing opportunity, I think.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. We could see that there was a great opportunity for us, and of course these platforms. The nice thing about both the insurance business and the banking business is they're very complicated to get into, and so there's kind of a natural moat around them, which is good. So they've really served us well, and they've also given the family an opportunity to diversify away from the car business. So initially, when we started these businesses, they all thread through the automobile. They was all related, but they're all standalone business units, and so now it's allowed us to diversify into other spaces. Like in our banking group, our fastest growing piece of that business is our commercial lending. In our insurance business, we now do personal lines and home insurance, and our fastest growing business today is doing commercial building insurance and that sort of thing. So it's given us that platform to be able to provide our family a lot of diversification in our business interests, and that's really served us well. So it's been good in that respect.
Great. Let me get back to automobiles, where we've seen a great deal of innovation and change in the last number of years, and I'll refer to an article from The Economist magazine of just a couple months ago. And I thought of you in this interview when I read this. Of the 5 most valuable firms in the moving people around business, so moving people around business, not automobiles per se, 5 most valuable firms in the world, Toyota and Volkswagen, names that we recognize. But then we've got Tesla, we've got Uber, and number 5 is Didi Chuxing, the Chinese equivalent of Uber. What does this say to you, and how do you reflect on that degree of innovation that we've seen, and what the future is going to look like for you in terms of your business leadership?
Sure. There is a lot of opportunity for disruptive change over the next little while. The electrification of the automobile, you mentioned Tesla was a big leader in that. Autonomous vehicles, so ride sharing, that sort of thing is coming. But the electrification, it is on us now, and I think over the next 10 years, they say by 2030, at least half of the vehicles that will be selling will be electric vehicles. So that's really going to change our automotive companies and how we service clients. It's going to be entirely different. It's going to become a replacement business in our service departments rather than repair. So lots of change coming, but it's going to be positive change, and I think that it's an exciting time to be in the car business for sure with all of this change. And of course, these technology companies that are rising to the top as being very valuable, which is driving that the autonomous vehicle potential. I think the autonomous vehicle is going to be a little bit a ways away because it's a very complicated thing, and it's going to start in fleets and that sort of thing, moving people rather than personal ownership in autonomous vehicles. I think that might be a little ways away, but it will eventually come on us, and lots of change.
So lots of change in terms of technology and industry and so on. Something that I hope doesn't change so much or to the same extent is leadership. And we as a school of business thinking about helping young people become effective leaders for the future. We believe in some constants in leadership. From your perspective, who are your role models? Who helped you become the leader that you are today, Don?
Who had the most effect on me in terms of where I went? I would say my mom and my dad had probably had the most influence on me. I mean, my mother, as you can imagine, was a very busy woman, bringing up 8 children, but it was her that taught us all the life lessons that are core values in our business. My father, he set the pace. I mean, he worked hard and he played hard, but he was the born salesman, and he really taught me the value of paying attention to the front end of the business. He often said to me, not much happens in a business until something gets sold. And but something that really stuck with me that he passed on to me, and this was in the 80s. We were starting to get some success in building out our network, and Dad was getting to be a pretty well-known, sizable businessman. And he said to me, Don, when I get up in the morning and I look in the mirror, I say to myself, you are a small businessman. And that's something that really stuck with me and really resonated with me. And it's something that we built into both our organizational structure and the way we run our business, the culture of our business. We, in total, have some scale and are, a reasonably good size family enterprise, but we're really a number of small business units, and we operate that way. We have a very flat organizational structure. It keeps us nimble and be able to respond to the market changes. And so that's really meant a lot to me and really stayed with me. And I think it's served us well over the years.
Mm. So, a lot of people will attribute success to different factors, and some will look at successful businesses or families and speak to happenstance or luck or circumstances and so on. And of course, the flip side of that is hard work and dedication. When you think about those two sides to the coin of success, luck and hard work, how do you see that balance?
I don't know. I mean, it's helpful to have both ingredients. It's not impossible to do to have success and have one and not the other. But I mean, I was born into the Western world in a stable democracy and a stable business family. I mean, that is all just plain luck. And I was dealt a good hand. But from there, with some patience and hard work, I don't know if it's hard. If you enjoy what you're doing, I don't think it's that hard. But I think everybody has a certain number of opportunities, or if you call it luck, or opportunities that go by them. But the question is whether they actually recognize them and they seize on them. So I had the good fortune of going to the University of Alberta. And at the risk of offending you and your business school, probably the best thing that I got out of the University of Alberta was my wife, Kim.
we can't compete.
Yeah, no, exactly. And a lot of my friends would agree with me on that. But it is helpful to have a partner that's supportive and is a sounding board and gives you encouragement, and that's not to say that she would hesitate to tell me when I'm dead wrong about something, but it is helpful. But it was the U of A that gave me the skills to help me recognize those opportunities and then actually seize on them and do something about them. And so it's a balance of both. It's a good formula to have some luck and work ethic, and it's a formula for success in my view. So there you go.
I like that. And so, in that answer, you mentioned family and being born into an entrepreneurial family, a stable family, in a good environment, and so on. A recent edition of the Harvard Business Review talked about families and business families, and of course you can imagine where I'm going with this. There are successful stories and less successful stories. You now have the third generation of the Wheaton family within the family business. How do you manage that with all of the challenges both on the business and on the family side in order to be successful on both of those planes? And you mentioned earlier that you really like and get along well with your siblings, and that's fantastic. But that's not the case in all business families. Is there a secret sauce that the Wheatons have?
Well, I mean, you're right. We are a sizable family. There's 8 at my generational level. There are 34 grandchildren, and we've got about a dozen of them that are working in the business now. And there are 20 great-grandchildren and counting. So we are a sizable group. But we do spend a lot of time on family governance and making sure that we're meeting the needs of our shareholders. So all of those 50 people I mentioned are all shareholders of our corporation. So we have to be mindful of that. But right today at the second generational level, there's 8 of us that are sitting around the boardroom table, and mentioned that we all get along well. But what we recognized long ago that it just wasn't going to work with 34 grandkids sitting around the boardroom table. I mean, that would not be a smart thing to leave to our children. So what we've done is we did this with got lots of advice from planners and so on how to do this, but we have. Each of our 8 family units have a position around the boardroom table, and it's going to remain that way. So to the extent that as I move away, or one of my siblings, or whatever, that family unit puts somebody forward to represent their interests and with full voting power and so on of their family shareholder interests. So it's going to remain at 8, which is manageable. And we don't care how they select whoever it is that they put forward, we accept it. So we think that we're good for the next 35 years. After 35 years, it's up to the third generation to figure it out. But we changed our business model a little bit. It used to be that any business deal that came along had to come to our parent company for consideration and investment. But what we decided to do, which is contrary to what all the experts were telling us, they will tell you to be able to carry a company forward for generations, you have to trim the tree. You have to take out the participants or the shareholders that are no longer active in the business. Well, we didn't accept that advice, and rather than trim the tree, we are planting 8 new trees. So each one of our family units we've now released to be able to go and do and grow their business as well as well as be partners in the greater family business, but grow their business so that then they can offer their children what my parents offered me. And so we think that we have a pretty enduring structure going forward, but come and ask me in 35 years.
And you still get along, which is a credit, I think,
well.
to your family, and certainly a credit to your parents and their legacy.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you for that.
Yeah. Don, you and I sat down almost 15 months ago to talk about our 800 or 900 person dinner where we were going to have this chat. And of course, all of our lives have been disrupted significantly. We're having this chat rather than speaking in front of that large crowd, and our businesses and our personal lives have been disrupted. What has this pandemic and the disruptions taught you about resilience, about being innovative, and taught you about leadership?
Well, when I look back at what we've gone through, and it's obviously been a big disruption, having to adjust. But something that I've learned, I think, more so especially over the last little while, is it's really hard to predict the future. I mean, and we really take a dose of humility when we're trying to figure out where we're going to be a year from now or 5 years from now. And this last period of time is a really good example of that. Like, it's easy to predict that when, a pandemic is coming along that people are going to get sick and hospitals are going to be overrun and so on. But, who would have thought that they would have been able to figure out a vaccine inside of something less than a year? And the fastest that it had ever been done before is like, 5 years, I think it took for the last vaccine. And so, who would have thought that the stock market would be at an all-time high today? Who could predict that? And even a little bit closer at home in our automotive businesses, our inventories are at the lowest level that they're running at 15% of what we typically would have for inventory. And so it might have been easy to predict that there'd be some disruption in the supply chains and they'd be, maybe less supply. But who would have thought that the demand would still be really strong? And so it's, we're in a position where our businesses are much different to run today. So, so I've learned quite a bit about over the last little while about taking a real dose of humility when you're trying to figure out where we're going to be in the future.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Don, my last question. As the Dean of the Alberta School of Business, I'm of course interested in our students and in helping them envisage a productive and impactful career. What messages, what thoughts would you like to leave with our students? Well,
we're in Alberta right now, and I think all geographic areas go through business cycles, and things get a little bit tougher. But I happen to think that the opportunities in Alberta are going to be incredible going forward, even through the transition to renewable energy and so on. So my message to the business students that are graduating, particularly if you want to go into the automobile business, it's a really exciting time. But the time to go to step out there and take a little bit of risk is when you're at the lower end of the cycle. And I think that there's going to be lots of opportunity. Stay right here in Alberta because I think you'll be well rewarded. Step out there and take a risk and go for it. So,
Don, that's terrific. Don, I want to congratulate you. You are the 39th recipient of the Canadian Business Leader Award. You are a man of integrity. You're an innovative leader, a thoughtful leader, and a community builder. We are really, really proud to be able to present this award to you. Congratulations.
Thank you, and I'm very honored to receive this special recognition. It really is wonderful, and thank you to the U of A.